What's up guys, welcome back. This is Anime Crossover. You'll be watching What If Naruto Was Reborn as Dr. Doom Part 8. Now, let's begin. Following my telepathic communication with Zod and Thrag, I proceeded cautiously towards the Wakandian gathering. As they gradually approached me, I chose to similarly advance towards them. This provided Zod and Thrag ample opportunity to reach my side. Shortly thereafter, only a few seconds elapsed before our two groups encountered each other directly. When this occurred, I maintained a broad, albeit insincere, smile and extended my left hand towards T'Challa. The individual grasping it and shaking it. "It is a pleasure to meet you, Prince T'Challa of Wakanda," I stated. "The same to you, King Naruto," T'Challa responded. Once he completed the gesture, we concluded our handshake. "I must say, your reputation precedes you. You are quite different from what I had envisioned," T'Challa remarked to me. "Thank you very much. I receive that feedback frequently," I replied. "I appreciate the presence of a fellow small nation supporting the future foundation. However, I am intrigued to know what you and your delegation are doing here this evening. As I was involved in preparing the guest list, I do not recall a delegation from Wakanda being included," I stated. "Perhaps it escaped your memory," T'Challa proposed. "No, it certainly would not have," I responded. I then removed the insincere smile from my face. "Let us proceed directly to the matter at hand, Prince T'Challa. What brings you and your delegation here this evening?" Upon my words and the noticeable shift in my demeanor, T'Challa and the accompanying Dora Milaje subtly adjusted their own expressions as well. "Very well, King Naruto. We shall proceed without any further preliminaries, as you suggested," T'Challa responded to me. "That is satisfactory," I replied. "Could you please share the reason for your presence this evening?" "The armor you possess. Our analysis indicates it contains vibranium," I stated. Completing T'Challa's statement on his behalf, "It is also my property. Therefore, before you inquire, I must inform you that the vibranium will not be returned. Even if you were to request it, I would not consider relinquishing it to you or your associates," I stated. "Although you believe you possess the rights to all vibranium globally, merely due to your nation's historical abundance of it," I whispered, audible solely to individuals in close proximity. "I am uncertain about what you are referring to. Please refrain from underestimating my intelligence, Prince T'Challa," I interjected. "And please refrain from interrupting our nation's prince in that manner, King Naruto," Okoi remarked to me. "I will. As you have just mentioned, I hold the position of a king, while the individual you are accompanying this evening remains a prince. Our statuses are distinct at this moment. Please keep that in mind," I stated. Okoi directed a sharp glare at me and advanced a step closer. However, when she proceeded, Zod advanced and cleared her path. "Please refrain from doing that," he stated to her. "My subordinate is correct. We would not want to create a disturbance in front of all these individuals, would we?" I inquired. "Okoi," T'Challa stated. Upon his action, she took a step back. "Zod is performing the same action. Thank you for your patience. As I was stating prior to the interruption, I must express my concerns regarding the perception of Wakanda. It is imperative to acknowledge that it is not merely a third-world nation, but rather one of the most advanced countries globally, significantly ahead in technology and medicine. This advancement is largely attributed to the vibranium that your nation diligently safeguards. The implications of revealing this truth to the world, particularly to the global Black community, are profound. One must consider the potential reactions if it were known that Wakanda possessed the capability to prevent the slave trade and colonization yet chose not to intervene. As a leader of a smaller nation, I can empathize with the decisions made by your ancestors. However, it is essential to recognize that public sentiment may not be as forgiving." T'Challa displayed a look of anger, mirrored by his Dora Milaje, as I spoke. "Do you intend to threaten Wakanda?" T'Challa inquired of me. "Indeed, I accept the challenge," I responded with confidence. "I must insist that you depart from this location at once. Failure to do so may result in certain governments obtaining satellite scans of your nation by tomorrow morning, and major media outlets receiving detailed information regarding Wakandian activities," I stated. T'Challa's anger intensified with each passing second, mirroring my own feelings. However, he did not take any action. "We are departing," he stated. He subsequently turned and began to walk away, his Dora Milaje trailing behind me. Satisfactory. The large feline understands its position. In light of our recent confrontation, I must expedite my plans concerning Wakanda. If this reality's T'Challa resembles his Earth 616 counterpart, it is imperative that I address the situation promptly. Otherwise, he may become a source of frustration, achieving the title of Champion of Bast, ascending to the role of King of the Dead, and integrating alchemy with science to establish a novel discipline referred to as shadow physics. I would prefer to avoid any involvement with that Black Panther if possible, particularly given that there is capacity for only one exceptional monarch from a small foreign nation, possessing expertise in both science and magic. Sincerely yours. I have not excelled in the practice of sharing. After T'Challa and his entourage departed, I excused Zod and Thrag from my presence, allowing them to resume their enjoyment of the festivities. Immediately after I completed my task, I noticed Norman approaching me. He is accompanied by his family. Harry resembles a youthful James Franco. Insert image of Harry Osborn here. I smiled upon seeing them. It's a pleasure to see you, Norman, I said. The same to you, Naruto, Norman responded. We then proceeded to shake hands. Following his actions, I redirected my focus to Emily and Harry. It is a pleasure to meet you both, Ms. Emily Osborn and Mr. Harry Norman, who has spoken highly of you. I said to them. Emily responded, the same to you, King Naruto. A true king. Impressive, Harry remarked. Indeed, young man, being a king has its advantages, I remarked. Securing a moment of amusement for the entire Osborn family. We continued to engage in conversation for a while longer, during which I had a brief discussion about Emily's project focused on bacteria capable of dissolving plastic in the ocean. A plan that we have agreed to discuss further at a later date. After a brief period, the Osborns proceeded on their journey. Once they completed their tasks, I prepared to re-engage in networking activities. I paused upon recognizing yet another familiar face. A young Warren Worthington III, recognized as Angel and later as Archangel in the comics. Insert image of Warren Worthington III, Angel here. The young boy is accompanied by his parents, and it appears that he has not yet realized his potential. Considering his appearance, it seems likely that it will occur in the near future. When the time comes, he will have a reliable support system to rely on. Based on my understanding of his overall background, following the development of his abilities, his father rejected him. Subsequently, after he ultimately achieved acceptance, he became a pawn of Apocalypse. That will not occur in this reality, especially under my supervision. As I noted this in my mind, I resolved to introduce myself to the individual who would become the future Winged Man. I was abruptly halted when Brainiac reached out to me through technopathy. Since I designed him to be capable of this, I apologize for the interruption, Your Majesty. I would like to bring to your attention that I have identified another uninvited guest for this evening's events that you should be informed about. Brainiac provided an explanation regarding this specific guest's skill set. Very well, I responded. Please direct me to their location, I stated. When I executed Brainiac, I accomplished precisely that. Subsequently, I discovered that I was observing none other than Betsy Braddock, also known as Psylocke, who was disguised as one of the event's servers. Insert image of Betsy Braddock, Psylocke here. As I observed her, I felt a sense of frustration welling up inside me. Considering that she operates as a mercenary and assassin for hire, this indicates that she is probably present this evening to fulfill a task. When it rains, it certainly pours for the individual in Marvel. It is what it is. There is nothing within my capacity to address this matter. It is now imperative to prevent a potential assassination attempt. Please insert a GIF of Logan, Wolverine here today. Upon identifying Psylocke, I prepared to proceed in her direction. I paused only when I observed her approaching me in a manner reminiscent of the Wakandians from earlier. Upon observing this, I paused my current activities and awaited the unfolding of the next few minutes. This ultimately resulted in my perception of Psylocke attempting to exert telepathic influence over me, indicating that I was probably her intended target. I find this to be expected, reflecting on the impact I have been creating. I must admit, I was beginning to feel somewhat slighted that no one had engaged a highly skilled assassin to eliminate me. While it is unlikely that the assassin would achieve their objective, the sentiment behind the effort remains significant. Proceeding forward, I chose to participate in Pislaki's game and began to move in accordance with her telepathic guidance. She directed me to exit through one of the sets of doors leading to the rooms. A minute later, the woman joined me. After she completed her task, the two of us proceeded to one of the many unused offices located on the 5th floor of the building. Upon our arrival, Psylocke turned to address me. She subsequently formed one of her signature psychic energy constructs in her left hand. The favored weapon of choice here was a katana blade. That is quite impressive, I remarked. Betsy displayed a shocked expression simultaneously with my own. This outcome aligns with expectations. Throughout this entire period, she believed she had me entirely under her telepathic influence. However, she has come to realize that it was merely a deception. Upon realizing this, Betsy promptly took action and attempted to sever my head from my body using her weapon. Identifying her as an expert in her field. Unfortunately for her, she chose the incorrect individual to focus on today. Skillfully evading Betsy's katana by stepping back, I then advanced and secured my left hand around her throat. Following that, I forcefully pushed her back against the door and then applied a mild electric shock. Before extending my pincers and gently applying pressure to her neck, causing a slight incision. With a resolute expression, I met her gaze directly. Please remain silent and pay attention. Any movement will result in dire consequences. Should you attempt to utilize your abilities in any manner, the outcome will be fatal. Kindly blink once if you comprehend my instructions, I stated. Betsy subsequently blinked once. Good, I stated. Now, may I inquire who has commissioned you to eliminate me? I asked her. Met only with silence. At that moment, I seized Betsy's right wrist with my right hand and applied pressure until I heard a distinct pop, indicating that I had indeed broken it as planned. Betsy expressed her distress with a loud cry. However, I disregarded her pleas and reiterated my inquiry. Who dispatched you to eliminate me? I inquired, positioning my free hand on Betsy's other wrist. Please hold on for a moment, she started to plead with me. I will speak. I will speak. Just please, do not, she implored. Go on. I told her. I was not specifically sent to eliminate you, she stated. I accepted this position to ensure long-term stability. Please provide an explanation, I requested of her. Recently, an open contract was issued by an unknown individual. A reward of $5 million is offered to anyone who can eliminate the current monarch of Latveria, Naruto von Regnum, Betsy explained. I understand, I reflected. As I absorbed the information Betsy just conveyed to me, I utilized my telepathy to ascertain the veracity of her statements. My preliminary assessments confirm the accuracy of her statement. A bounty has been placed on my head. It is indeed quite substantial. I find myself quite moved, although the individuals responsible for issuing the bounty have effectively sealed their own fate. Since no one is permitted to take such action against Naruto without facing dire consequences. Thank you for sharing that with me, Ms. Braddock, I said. Betsy displayed yet another shocked expression upon hearing me use her name. How did you achieve that? You are not the only individual with psychic abilities, Ms. Braddock. In comparison to my capabilities, yours are quite limited. I stated candidly. It is now time for you to proceed. I stated. I subsequently guided Betsy away from the door and proceeded to open it. Presenting Thrag positioned on the opposite side, I contacted him telepathically as soon as Psylocke initiated her move against me and instructed him to follow us. As a precautionary measure, I ensured I had support available. I prioritize caution above all else. Positioning Betsy in front of Thrag, I released my grip from her throat and withdrew my pincers. Thrag, I would like to introduce you to Betsy Braddock, also recognized as the Evo mercenary, Psylocke. Betsy, this is Thrag, one of my top employees and your new colleague. I stated. Excuse me, could you clarify? Betsy inquired. Coworker. Additionally, what exactly is an EVO? She asked. To address your second question, EVOs is a term I coined for individuals with abilities similar to ours. There is certainly more complexity to the topic, but that is sufficient information for now. Regarding your first question, yes, Thrag will be your new colleague, as you are now part of my team. I stated. It would be unwise to allow someone of Psylocke's caliber to slip away. What if I decline? She inquired. That is indeed an option. However, I would advise against pursuing it, as it may result in immediate death, I stated. If I didn't believe you could be of some value to me, you would have met your end the moment I was certain we were alone, I stated. Gazing into Betsy's eyes, adorning my face with a calculated smile upon observing this, she stepped back. Very well, Betsy. What is your decision? Will you choose to work exclusively for me, or will this be the end? I inquired. The former. I will work for you, she stated. Excellent, I responded. Frag, you are aware of the appropriate course of action regarding her now. Yes, my liege, Frag responded. If Betsy attempts to escape, you may restrain her, but do not cause her fatal harm. However, if her actions escalate beyond acceptable limits, you are permitted to take further measures. Is that clear? Yes, Frag responded. He is a good man, I remarked. Pislocky's expression of horror was evident as she shifted her gaze between Thrag and me. Now coming to understand the extent of her significant mistake. Unfortunately for her, it is now too late to express any regrets. Now her purple-haired presence is close to me, and I have no intention of letting it go. At any time. Upon providing my final instructions to Thrag, he and Betsy proceeded on their way. Thrag will escort her back to the embassy. He would utilize a magical teleportation gate that I had installed to transport Psylocke back to Latveria. She would subsequently undergo a comprehensive debriefing regarding any information she possessed. Prior to commencing work, it is probable that it falls under Natasha's responsibility. Alternatively, she may find herself employed by Zemo or one of the Primarchs. I am uncertain. I prefer not to micromanage my team unless it is absolutely necessary. I will review her case upon my return to Latveria. I am confident that wherever Betsy may go, she will excel in her work and advance my initiatives. However, she could make a mistake and put herself in danger. Regardless of the outcome, I will not incur a loss. Nonetheless, after they departed, I took a moment to gather my thoughts before leaving the office myself. I proceeded to navigate my way back to the gathering. Upon entering the lobby, I came across Tony, who was seated at the front desk, consuming champagne directly from the bottle. An exhausted expression on his face. Observing them in this manner prompted me to investigate the situation further. Observing a visibly depressed Tony Stark is quite unsettling and difficult to ignore. I took a seat in the open chair beside him. That prompted Tony to direct his gaze towards me. Naruto. Stark, I responded. Could you please share the reason for your decision to consume alcohol in the lobby by yourself? I am uncertain, but it may relate to Pepper's treatment of me, which has been quite unfavorable since you introduced me to my daughter recently, he stated. Indeed. That is correct. I responded. What are your thoughts on Riri? I inquired. Honestly, she resembles a younger female version of myself, Tony stated. She is an exceptional young individual. Maya has done an admirable job in her upbringing, far surpassing what I might have achieved had I encountered her earlier. He stated, activating the arc reactor embedded in his chest. I believe you were not as unfavorable a person prior to becoming Iron Man. Certainly, you exhibited traits of being a womanizer, a show-off, and somewhat unreliable. I appreciate your attempt to uplift my spirits, Tony interjected with a hint of sarcasm. You did not allow me to complete my statement, I responded. While you may not have been the best, you certainly were not the worst. It's possible that had you been aware of Riri from the start, the Tony we see today could have emerged much earlier. I explained. Perhaps, he conceded. Unexpectedly, I find myself in the role of a father. Indeed, I must emphasize that it is quite challenging, I conveyed to him. I have confidence that you will manage well. In fact, I find it quite surprising that there aren't more individuals resembling the Stark demeanor, considering your past conduct. Protection in the bedroom was one of the few lessons my father emphasized, Tony acknowledged. It appears that I have inherited that trait from him, despite the fact that he never expressed his love for me. I am confident he did, I responded. No, I am aware that he did. Indeed, it remains uncertain, he remarked quietly. Indeed. Now, Stark, it's time to move past this, I stated. What is it? Tony inquired. You heard me, I responded. It's time to focus on what truly matters. You have a daughter who relies on you, along with Pepper. It's clear that you and she would complement each other well. As a wise individual once advised, it's time to take action or remain silent. Remember, you are Tony Stark, but more importantly, you are Iron Man. I stated. I then placed my hand gently on Tony's shoulder. It was a productive discussion. Before he had the opportunity to respond, I stood up and made my way back to the party venue. I spent the remainder of the evening in enjoyment, engaging in conversation, enjoying refreshments, and participating in dance with both Susan and Jessica. Consequently, I concluded the evening positively. However, the following day I resumed my professional demeanor. While in my private office at the embassy, I conducted a conference call with Zora, Lucia, Zemo, Natasha, and all of my Primarchs, providing a detailed account of the events that occurred the prior evening at the Future Foundation's grand opening party. A bounty? Who would dare commit such an act against our king? Katma inquired. I am uncertain, but I will seek to discover the answer, Natasha stated. Thank you, Natasha, I said to her. However, we must keep in mind that the bounty on my head is not solely an immediate concern, I stated. Wakanda. Following the incident last night, I am confident they will intensify their efforts concerning us. I will ensure that the borders are completely secured, Zora stated. Excellent work, Zora, I said to her. I subsequently directed my focus towards Zemo. Zemo, it is time for us to take action against both Clow and Eric Stevens, I informed him. Yes, my Emperor, the man responded. Is there anything else of significance we should address before concluding this meeting? I inquired. Emperor, I would like to inform you that, thanks to the information provided by Atuma, we now possess the precise location of Atlantis and have initiated preliminary steps concerning the underwater nation. Katma reported. That is satisfactory, I responded. Is there anything further? I inquired. At that time, there was a lack of vocal support from others. With that, I hereby adjourn this meeting, I stated. I subsequently concluded the conference call. Following that, I promptly began to mentally prepare for my upcoming meeting. Once it commences, there must be no margin for error. A single error could have significant consequences for me. I assure you, this is true. Upon completing my mental preparations, I heard a knock at my office door. Please enter, I said. As I entered, Jessica opened the door and welcomed the individual with whom I was scheduled to meet next. Reed Richards. The moment has arrived for me to implement my strategy and protect the world from this individual. A task that Naruto is highly likely to succeed in. Naruto, Reed stated to me. Reed, I responded. A man entered the room as I did. Once he departed, Jessica closed the door behind him, leaving us completely alone. This signifies that the beginning is upon us. If others wish to succeed, it is essential to elevate your efforts. Additionally, it is essential for a greater number of individuals to participate in the voting process. It has come to my attention that some individuals engage with the content but do not participate in the voting process for the contest. This explains why certain victories have been highly competitive. Please consider increasing your voting participation. Today, please include a GIF of Warren Worthington III, also known as Angel. In relation to the upcoming SI, I have decided to proceed with Hank Pym, Ant-Man. I have not encountered any fanfiction centered around him, and I believe it would be quite intriguing. I will inform everyone when the first chapter is released. Following the exchange of greetings between Naruto and Reed, they maintained a silent gaze at one another for several seconds, until Naruto took his seat at the chair. Please, have a seat, he said. He gestured toward the two chairs positioned in front of his desk. Reed said, Why, thank you. He then sat in one of the chairs in front of Naruto's desk. So, I must admit I was a bit surprised when you requested I meet with you today last night at the party. Reed gave an interview. Well, I had matters I wished to urgently discuss with you. One's better done in private, and I wanted to do it sooner rather than later. Hence the request I made to you last night. By the way, thanks for agreeing to it. Reed said, No problem. So, what matters do you wish to discuss with me? He was curious. First and foremost, it's about me and Susan, Naruto said. Reed refrained from scowling and felt a tiny constriction in his chest as Naruto brought the two of them up. What about you two? Reed inquired. in regards to how you found out about our new relationship status. I'm sorry. Naruto was speaking. Reed was taken by surprise. You're sorry? Reed inquired. Naruto gently nodded his head. I am, for I already thought Susan had informed the rest of you in the fore about it. And then when I saw yours and the others' reactions the other day when I kissed her, I knew she hadn't. A matter we had a long chat about afterwards. Why? Reed inquired. Because I know of the history between you and Susan Reed, and I didn't want you to be blindsided, like you were, by the fact that she and I are now a couple. Naruto offered his explanation, since I consider you a colleague and more importantly a friend. He went on. He put on a phony smile, while inside, Naruto was evilly laughing his ass off. Since the majority of what he is saying to Reed right now is S-grade nonsense. But looking into Reed's eyes, Naruto can tell he believes him. Good, Naruto thought. Everything is going as planned. Naruto, thank you. What you just said means a lot. Reed began to talk. He gave a little smile. Naruto responded, you're welcome. Now then, on to the second matter I asked you here today to discuss. Naruto reached for his keyboard and typed for a bit. He then moved his monitor towards Reed. Reed then looked at Naruto's computer screen, which had many windows open displaying blueprints and schematics. After reviewing the blueprints and schematics, Reed returned his focus to Naruto. Naruto, is this what I think it is? If you mean the beginnings of what I hope to be the world's first fully functional teleportation device, then yes, Reed. It is what you think it is. Naruto responded, and I want your help on the project. So, what do you say? Reed instantly responded, I would be delighted as well. Naruto replied, excellent. After that, he and Reed began discussing the teleportation project. Naruto continued to laugh evilly on the inside, since both phases 1 and 2 of his, Richard's extermination, plan had gone smoothly. Now all that remained was to carry out phase 3. The final phase, which would result in Reed Richards seeing the terrible Reaper from Family Guy. June 13, 2008. Naruto and Reed smiled as they stood in Reed's personal lab within the Baxter building. Directly in front of their recently finished teleportation machine, which, if it worked well, could be another invention that changed the world. Isn't it beautiful, Naruto? Reed remarked. Naruto responded, yes, it truly is. Though we still need to make sure it works. Otherwise it'll just mean we've spent the past week simply creating a paperweight. Don't worry, Naruto. We've both done the math, we know it works. Now the only question remains is who gets to use it first. I think that honor should go to you, Reed, Naruto said. Really? Reed inquired. Naruto said, yes. After all, we built this device in your personal lab. And I think that should mean something. So go on and get in there so I can send you to a beach in Hawaii. He was talking. Reed said, all right then. He then proceeded forward and entered the teleportation machine. Meanwhile, Naruto approached the machine control terminal, his smile fading. Brainiac. Naruto chatted with Brainiac as the third phase of the Richard's extermination approached its conclusion. Using his technopathy. Understood, Emperor. Everything is in place, just as you wanted. Brainiac said. When he did, Naruto smiled and stopped speaking to him. Reed closed the teleportation machine's door just as he did. Naruto then began manipulating the machine through the console. Reed could not contain his enthusiasm as it powered up. He wore a smile on his face, one that quickly faded as the seconds passed. Reed still hadn't transported. But that doesn't make sense, Reed thought. During the last week, he and Naruto ran hundreds of simulations to test how the chamber might react to organic materials. Everything came back in the green. This informed Reed that something else was going on. After comprehending this, he prepared to alert Naruto. Only for the individual in issue to approach the machine himself, hands folded behind his back. Oh good Naruto. You need to turn off the machine and get me out of it. Something has gone horribly wrong. Reed was quick to respond. Only for Naruto to remain stationary. Naruto, what's wrong with you? I told you we had a problem here, Reed asked again. Naruto responded, problem? I see no problem. Reed answered, yes, there is. Now seriously, Turn off the machine and pull me out. I'm starting to feel strange, he commented. Reed felt as if his body was being tugged in multiple ways at once. Ah yes, that would be the teleportation machine pulling your body apart at the atomic level. Naruto made a nonchalant comment. What? Reed exclaimed. If that's the case, then Naruto, you need to get me out of here. Now, no, Richards. That will not happen, Naruto responded. He then displayed a triumphant expression on his face. For that machine shall be your final resting place. He was speaking. No, don't tell me, Reed said. Yes, it is as you think. I made the teleportation machine act in its current state. Naruto spoke. Reed became enraged and started knocking on the machine's door. You bastard. When I get out of here, I'm going to kill you. I will fucking murder you, Naruto, you woman-stealing bastard. Ah, and now we get to the heart of the thing. Susan, Naruto replied. The wonderful woman you took for granted, Richards. Who is now mine? She made her own choice, and then you have the audacity to obsess over her, believing that she belongs to you. Pathetic and awful, but you've always been like this. Vc tor rrrr, Reed snarled, sending spit flying out of his mouth. So, you're finally expressing your genuine character. That of a rabid animal. Good. Naruto responded. Oh, and don't worry about Ben, Johnny, and, of course, Susan. I will take wonderful care of them. Now, Richards, goodbye. I could say it was a pleasure to know you, but that would be a lie, he continued. With that, Naruto walked away. Reed glared at him the whole time. All while attempting to flee the teleportation chamber before it completed the task Naruto had set it to undertake. Regardless, Reed was unable to find a way out of the chamber. Even his powers were ineffective, but, of course, they were, since Naruto had provided for them. Reed was completely helpless as his body was ripped apart. Ag. Reed eventually started screaming in agony. He fell to his knees as the ache in his body worsened. Until Reed Richards disintegrated into nothing but atoms. He vanished without a trace. Naruto took note of this and smiled. For he had just killed one of the most bothersome gnats buzzing around him. Making it a wonderful day. Now, add an image of Robert Drake, Iceman here. Naruto's POV. I cherished the moment when I realized Reed Richards had genuinely passed away. I then paused for a moment and used both technological and magical means to ensure Reed's death. Because, as I've mentioned several times, this is a Marvel universe. Where shit can sneak up on you when you least expect it. Even if you accept it, you may still end up fucked. That is why I am doing what I am doing right now. After a few minutes, I stopped checking. Since all of the findings I received were the same. Negative. I could not discover a single sign of Reed Richards anywhere. Making his death permanent. When I was certain of this, I raised my hands in the air and waved them as if I didn't care. That was until Herbie floated towards me, holding a goblet of crimson wine. When I saw him, I paused my actions. As he approached me, Herbie offered me the glass of wine, saying, "An fantastic accomplishment, my emperor." "Here is a drink to celebrate," the little robot informed me. Since he, like all other technology in the Baxter building, from the security systems to the equipment in Richard's lab, is under my authority. When I implanted Brainiac into the F4 systems during what I now refer to as the Blastar incident, I tasked him with not only sending me information from their computers and spying on the four, but also gradually hacking everything in the building and turning it to Naruto's advantage. All in preparation for today. Why, thank you, Herbie. I replied. I then accepted the glass and took a drink from it. I savored the taste of the wine as it passed down my throat. I'll eventually finish it. When I finished, I returned the glass to Herbie and proceeded to one of the lab's numerous terminals. There was still one thing I needed to do to ensure that none of the remaining F4 knew I was responsible for Reed's death. I'll blow myself up. Susan was lost in thought, leaning her head against the windshield of the SUV she was in. Are you okay, Ms. Susan? That is, until Chris Roth called her out. Since she was already with the boy, along with her brother, Johnny. Naruto had asked the two of them to take him out and show him about New York today while he and Reed finished up on a large project they had been working on for the past week. Johnny and Susan had no issue honoring the request. So they brought the boy out and Kristoff had a great time. They were now headed back towards the Baxter building. Yes, I'm fine, Susan responded. In actuality, she wasn't. She had a pressing need to share something with Naruto about their relationship. Geez, sis, you are a terrible liar, ow, Johnny shouted. His face was thrust forward against the back of the seat in front of him, courtesy of a Sussman force field. Johnny, maybe for once you could learn to keep your mouth shut. Susan offered an apology. Yeah, whatever, Johnny responded. He picks himself up and returns to his seat, just as the SUV they were in approached the Baxter building. Boom! Only for Small's explosion to go off exactly as they did. Susan, Johnny, and Kristoff all leapt out of the car and turned to face the direction of the smoke from the explosion. The same goes for their security detail. Susan did not hesitate when she saw the explosion coming from Reed's lab. She produced a force field disc beneath her feet and began flying upward. Flame on. Johnny is flaming on and repeating the same thing. The siblings quickly arrived at the facility, where they saw a large hole in the side. Looking inside, they saw that much of the lab had been destroyed. Naruto and Reed. Susan called out. Susan. Naruto responded. Susan managed to enter the lab after hearing him. Johnny is directly behind her. The two of them entered just as Naruto hurled a destroyed computer terminal from his body. His clothing were in tatters. Susan landed in front of him and went up to hug him, saying, Naruto, I'm so glad you're okay. Thank you, Susan. Naruto responded. He wraps his arms around Susan and reciprocates her hug. So, what happened here? Johnny inquired after he had landed. Susan and Naruto broke up their hug when he did. There was something amiss with the machine that Reed and I were working on. We're not sure what happened, but energy suddenly began to build up, and we both knew it was going to unleash a terrible chain reaction that could wipe out half of New York. We tried all we could to halt it, but nothing worked. Then Reed discovered a solution. He then tried it all on his own. Naruto explained that he was sacrificing himself in the process. Johnny and Susan's expressions are filled with terror as Naruto speaks. No, Naruto, you can't mean. Susan trailed off. I do. Naruto spoke, and I'm sorry to say that Reed has died. No, that cannot be true. It simply cannot, Johnny exclaimed. But it is, Naruto answered, and once again, I sincerely apologize. I attempted to stop Reed. I attempted to save him, but I wasn't able to, and you have my heartfelt apologies. He said. Which, of course, was a pile of crap. However, if anyone investigated any surviving surveillance footage or data from any of the machines remained in the lab, it would completely support Naruto's story. Just as he had planned, there was no one left to tell differently. Susan and Johnny had gone out with Kristoff, while Ben had spent the day visiting Alicia. Naruto had ensured that he and Reed were the only ones in the lab at the time of the accident. With this, he had completed the murder of Reed Richards. What will we tell Ben? Johnny inquired. The big guys are going to be devastated. If you want, I can inform him, Naruto said. I believe it is only right. Considering I am the one who failed to save his best friend. No, Naruto. Don't blame yourself, Susan said abruptly. You did everything you could. I know you did, because you're a kind and caring man, she stated. Thank you, Susan. Naruto said. He then enveloped Susan in his arms and drew her into another hug. Susan, however, whispered a surprising revelation into Naruto's ear as they hugged. She stated, I'm pregnant. Naruto instantly realized he was about to become a father again. He was terrified by the prospect, but he also came to love it. This was the first step toward establishing the Naruto dynasty. Naruto's point of view. Pregnant. Susan is pregnant. With my kids. When she murmured this to me, I concentrated all of my attention on her body. She sensed not only her own life energy, but also the tiniest remnants of two others. Telling me I'm going to have twins. Franklin and Valeria are the most likely candidates. But instead of being known as Richards, they will be known as Dooms. This is just fantastic. On another side, I'm glad I eliminated Reed when I did. Because I knew if that man found out Susan was bearing my babies, he would have suddenly transformed into the Maker right there. No question. However, that potential is no longer a reality. I've eliminated that threat permanently. Breaking my hug with Susan, I brought her in for a quick kiss before resting one of my hands on her tummy and gently rubbing it. "Susan, this is wonderful news," I said. "What are you two talking about?" Johnny questioned, walking up to Susan and me. "The fact that you're about to become an uncle, Jonathan," I told Johnny. When I did, his gaze shifted to where my hand was on Susan, then to his sister's face, widening in amazement and comprehension. "Sue, are you pregnant?" Susan responded. "I am." "Sis, that's fantastic," Johnny said. "I can't wait to let Ben and he began, only to pause when he realized Reed was no longer alive. "That's correct. Reed is sorry," Johnny told us. "I just forgot for a moment when I heard the good news." "Johnny, it's all right, you have nothing to apologize for. I told you so." "Naruto is right, Johnny," Susan said. "I would have done the same thing if I were in your situation." Johnny said, "Thanks you guys." Then, precisely as he did, a Doombot forced open the lab's damaged doors. Kristoff entered it after they had arrived, with his security team following him. "Are you okay, Father?" Kristoff questioned me. "I'm fine," I answered. Though unfortunately the same cannot be said for Dr. Richards. I began to speak. For he sacrificed himself not only to save my life, but countless others. "What did he do?" Kristen questioned. "Yes, he did. Including the lives of your new brothers," I told him. "For you see, Ms. Storm is expecting." Kristoff and his security team were ecstatic when I told them Sue was pregnant. "Wait, siblings? What do you mean, Naruto?" Susan questioned. "We're having twins, sweetheart. I can sense it," I told her. "I'm wondering how the twins will turn out now that Richard is no longer their father in this universe. Will Franklin still become a reality warper? Will Valeria get any powers? Will the twins still be male and girl?" These and many more questions are now racing through my thoughts in response to them. But there is one thing I am certain about. No matter how these twins turn out, I will adore them wholeheartedly. That is one promise Naruto will never break. June 20th, 2008. With a smile on my face, I watched Susan sleep sweetly in the bed next to mine. She had been doing this for the past week, since Richards died a week ago. Speaking of which, quite a lot has transpired since then. First, Ben Grimm was notified of Reed's death. To say he took it hard is an understatement. Grimm was filled with such pain after learning of his closest friend's death that it's surprising he didn't sink into a profound despair. I think I can thank Alicia and the other four for that. All three of them have been there for Ben, who, while not yet back to his old self, is getting there. Second, everything that could be salvaged from Reed's lab was, which, when investigated, confirmed the story I told everyone else. As far as anyone was concerned, Reed Richards died a hero's death. That is the final favor I will ever perform for that man. Third, we had a brief memorial ceremony for Reed. Fourth, I assisted Ben and the others in becoming the new owners of the Baxter building. Reed appears to have made no provisions for the building's ownership in the case of his untimely death. When I found out about this, I couldn't stand by and contacted my lawyers. All of them simply resolved the ownership issue with the Baxter building. So Ben, Johnny, and Susan are now co-owners of it. However, I doubt they will spend much time there in the foreseeable future. Given the fifth piece of knowledge I want to give, the remaking members of the F4 have agreed to accompany me back to Latveria this time around. I expected Susan would accept, considering her recent pregnancy, but I also invited Johnny and Ben, as well as Alicia Masters. I also promised to sponsor the three of them in the future if they wanted to continue their exploration, heroic adventures. However, they have not taken a decision on that topic yet. That's okay. I am not rushing them. Moving on. I continued to watch Susan sleep until I heard a quiet knock at my bedroom door. When I did, I softly got out of bed, put on my green silk robe, and approached the door, slowly opening it. Finding Jessica standing outside. "Yes, Jessica?" I asked her. Jessica informed me, "Sir, Director Fury is on the line for you." "Understood." Give me 5 minutes, I said. Jessica nodded as I spoke. I closed my bedroom door after she did. I then hurriedly dressed before leaving my bedroom for my office. I took Nick Fury off hold and answered his call. Hello, Nicholas. How can I assist you today? I asked him. Your offer. I've decided to accept it, Nick stated. Excellent. I answered. I'll be in touch. I added. Though before we close this little discussion of ours, I have to ask, what prompted you decide to accept my offer? I weighed the pros and cons of it and decided the former outweighed the latter. Fury told me this. I knew it wasn't the only reason he accepted my offer to help S.H.I.E.L.D. No, that is definitely so he can try to keep an eye on me and my people. It's cute, but since it is Fury's job, I will not fault him for it. Furthermore, I can now become the antidote that cures S.H.I.E.L.D.'s long-standing Hydra infection. So, yes, it's time to chase some tentacle bastards. I see, I answered. All right, then. Call you later, I said. I finished the call with Fury. Once I did, Brainiac spoke up. Good morning, Emperor. Morning, Brainiac. I answered. Brainiac informed me that the person who placed the bounty on your head, Nathaniel Essex, also known as Mr. Sinister, has been identified by Ms. Romanoff. Although she wanted to inform you of this herself, I told her that I should, and the price on your head has now been raised to 25 million. I see. I replied. Thank you for informing me of this. I remarked. Of course, Emperor. Brainiac said. He then ended the call. Once he did, I began making plans to launch a full-scale hunt for Sinister and his followers. Because it appears that fucker genuinely wants to die. So, I'll gladly grant his wish. To think, Sinister would place a bounty on my head. Looks like I was too forgiving with that old clone fetish guy. Now is the moment to take quick action to correct the issue. Before I could get started on my Sinister extermination plans, I received another call on my office phone. Which I answered. Yes, hello. I asked. It is me, sir. Jessica responded. A Charles Xavier is calling for you. I said, put him through. Jessica said, of course. She then put Charles Xavier through. Hello, King Naruto? Charles said. Yes, I am here, Professor Xavier, I said. So, why the unexpected phone calls? I have an answer as to the proposal you made me in my X-Men. He gave it away, making my already enjoyable day even better, but I would want to offer it to you in person. Is it okay if I go to my school? Perfectly, Professor. That was my response. Let's have our people talk and make the arrangements. It was my response. Xavier said, understood. We then ended the call. After we finished, I went back to getting ready to make sure Sinister ended up fucked in the ass without any Vaseline. Though knowing that freak might enjoy it. I suppose we'll see. I spent some more time refining my Sinister plans, then shifted gears to deal with a few other pressing issues. After I finished, I stepped out of my office. Before I head over to the X-Mansion, though, I've got a few things to sort out. I'm sorry, but I can't do that. Westchester County, North Salem, New York. June 22, 2008. The SUV glided through the black iron gates, and I fixed my gaze straight ahead. Just absorbing the aura of the storied X-Mansion. Insert image of X-Mansion here. The X-Men's headquarters, a building that seems to get leveled on a regular basis. From the state of the place, it appears I'm lucky enough to be here during a relatively nice week. The SUV's engine quieted as I parked in front of the mansion. I climbed out. There they were, Charles and Logan, just waiting, and a young Jean Grey, still a teenager. The Phoenix Force, a being of immense power, now resides within a host. The young girl, as I observed her, seemed to radiate an astonishing amount of force and promise, a fact that was almost hard to comprehend. Conversely, her appearance was already hinting at a future of undeniable beauty. Seeing Jean in person, I finally get it. It's no wonder so many guys, particularly those connected to the X-Men, were so taken with her. In my prior existence, I observed her from the standpoint of Rule 34. I've encountered a host of different female Marvel characters since arriving here. I'm not ashamed to say that, particularly because they'll never know I did it. Ah, King Naruto, welcome, Charles remarked, his voice warm. Thank you, Professor Xavier, I said. Logan, I murmured, addressing the man. He simply offered a quick nod in my direction. That was all it took. With everything settled, I focused on Jean. Who's this lovely young lady? I inquired. Jean Grey, sir. I mean, Your Highness, Jean said. Her voice trembled with nerves. Pleasure to meet you, Jean Grey, I said. Jean here was one of my first students, Xavier said. She's a powerful telepath and telekinetic. Ah, so you're quite the formidable young woman, I remarked. Good to know, I said. You're welcome, Jean said. A flush crept across her cheeks. It made her look even cuter. That's all she is, since I steer clear of jailbait. After all, I'm a proud MILF, and a lifelong member of the Church of Thick. The term, thick thighs save lives, is a motto I often use. Jean Grey. Not even on my radar. Though I'd be perfectly happy to get a shot at working with her clone, Madeline Pryor. Honestly, the folks behind X-Men '97 nailed it with her character. A goth mom. That was a fantasy one finally got to live. If Scott wasn't going to disclose her name, I would have been more than happy to. Let's continue. Once the formalities were out of the way, Xavier began showing me about the estate and its grounds. I observed a lot of kids, of different ages, each possessing some sort of extraordinary power. Aside from Jean, I couldn't spot anyone else from the X-Men, or any other familiar faces from Marvel's mutant roster, that I could remember. The tour finally wrapped up. Xavier was there, close to a tree beside the lake, on the estate. Well, what are your thoughts about my school? It's a wonderful place, Charles, I said. Truly. Thank you, King Naruto. Your words carry weight, especially coming from someone like you. Someone who's clearly doing more for Mutt. Sorry, I mean Evo. Than I am at the moment, Charles said. Don't be so hard on yourself, I said. You've been at this for ages, decades even, and you haven't quit. That kind of perseverance is something else. It's a real feat, especially considering everything. I genuinely appreciate your faith in me. However, as I mentioned, I'm not doing enough. That's why I want to accept your offer and collaborate with you, Charles stated. I see, I said. Thanks, Charles. You won't be disappointed, I swear, I said. No, I don't think I will, he replied. We exchanged a handshake. We continued our conversation for a while longer. The man even took me down to see the underground facilities, including Hank's lab. We had another engaging discussion. Before we went too far along, I pulled the plug. After that, I took care of a few more things before saying goodbye to Charles, his X-Men, and the X-Mansion. The SUV now pointed toward New York, and I pulled out my phone. I dialed Jessica. Yes, my Emperor? She inquired. The instant she answered. Charles Xavier and his X-Men have given us the green light. Now, let's get this show on the road. The words caught in my throat. Two people emerged out of nowhere, right in front of the SUV. One of them, a blow thrown from the front, sent the SUV airborne, flipping it over. The instant it occurred, I called my armor. I finally unbuckled those bothersome seatbelts. I immediately kicked open the rear door of the vehicle and pulled my two bodyguards out of the SUV. We all made it down in one piece. The SUV struck, and in an instant, it was a twisted wreck. Brainiac, I'm being attacked. Get back up here, now. I shouted his name. I discovered someone was attempting to jam my suit's communication system. It's a familiar cycle, isn't it? The effort, the stumble, the inevitable letdown. Understood, my Emperor. Reinforcements are on their way, Brainiac said. The 4 Doombots, the ones I always had shadowing me from above, touched down next to me and the 2 bodyguards. Both were Spartans. Are you both able to stand? I inquired. Yes, we can, Emperor. They said together. Good, I said. Stick with the Doombots. They'll keep you safe. I'll handle the idiots who think they can take me on, I said. The 2 men flanking me gave a curt nod. Once they were in, I zeroed in on those who'd made a tremendous mess of things, blissfully unaware of their own failings. I spotted 2 familiar faces, Blockbuster and Vanisher. Insert image of Blockbuster here. Insert image of Vanisher here. Before I could even think about fighting back, they had me completely surrounded. Behind me stood Arclight and Harpoon. Insert image of Arclight here. Insert image of Harpoon here. Ares and Hans were on my right. Insert image of Ares here. Insert image of Hans here. To my left, Vertigo stood, and Greykov was leveling two enormous rifles in my direction. Insert image of Vertigo here. Insert image of Greykov here. Seeing them all gathered, I understood immediately, this was Sinister's doing. Because they're all marauders. One of the two groups Sinister considers himself subordinates. The other was the Nasty Boys. They're likely with Sinister right now, finishing what they started. From now on, he'll be perpetually on edge. He's just unleashed Naruto's complete might. He hasn't a clue what he's gotten himself into, but soon enough, he will. Naruto surveyed the battlefield, his gaze locking onto Vertigo within the throng of foes. Given that she was already involved with the marauders, he understood that Sinister must have already gathered intelligence about the savage land. This suggests he could be running some of his own operations in that location. Naruto clicked his tongue, irritation bubbling up. He didn't want anyone else, except from himself and his own, getting a piece of the savage land. However, it seems that's probably not true. Well, that's that. Naruto's task is straightforward. Eliminate Sinister, the malignant presence in the savage land, before he can claim it as his own. Nothing too major, particularly now that Naruto has taken it upon himself to wipe Sinister from existence. He's already savoring the prospect of finishing it. Let's get started. Naruto faces the usual suspects. He twisted his neck, popping it from one side to the other. All right. Time to begin, he said. Before the marauders even had a chance to react, Naruto closed the gap to Vanisher. It seemed like teleportation, but it wasn't. Naruto had just utilized his incredible speed. Then, he drove his left hand straight through the man's chest. The instant it occurred, Vanisher coughed up blood. Before he could act again, Naruto yanked his spine free, pulling it through the gaping hole in his chest. The moment it occurred, the light vanished from Vanisher's eyes. He collapsed, lifeless, onto the ground. The other marauders, witnessing this, wore a blend of shock and fear. Naruto, however, didn't seem to notice them. He just discarded the Vanisher's spine, letting it fall beside him. He then focused on Blockbuster, leaping up and unleashing a right hook aimed squarely at his skull. That was the link. He slammed Blockbuster down, pinning him flat. His skull buckled under the force of the blow. He was left dead. Naruto snapped his palms together, a gesture that seemed to shake off some imaginary dust. After a few moments of that, he shifted his attention to the other marauders still standing. Their fear intensified with each passing second. It appears you've all come to understand the mistake you made in coming after me, Naruto said. You've come to understand your error, but it's too late. You'll pay the price, and so will your lives. Just like your boss, or rather, your master, Sinister. When I finally get my hands on him, he'll understand. The marauders were taken aback, perhaps more so, since their affiliation with Sinister was meant to be a secret. Yet, this monarch of a modest realm, the man Sinister had identified as an easy mark, well, he was dead. As Naruto's words sank in, the marauders understood, at last, the depth of Sinister's errors. He'd rung a bell that was off limits. A choice that would probably seal his fate. Fuck, Vertigo muttered. Then, almost immediately, Naruto bridged the gap, his hands finding her head, cradling it gently. Yes, you're in deep trouble, my dear, he said. Snap. Asterisk. Asterisk. Without a moment's pause, Naruto snapped Vertigo's neck, turning it a full circle. The act of ending her life. As her form crumpled, Naruto's gaze locked onto Greykro. No, stay the hell away from me, you monster. Greykro spat. The guns began to fire at Naruto. Not a single one of his attempts found its mark. Seeing this Greykro, he couldn't quite believe his eyes. Before he could fully grasp the scene, Naruto's right hand shot up, and he unleashed a torrent of crackling energy. The impact knocked Greykro down. The man dropped his firearms, his body racked with spasms. Greykro's screams echoed, a raw sound of pain as the electric current coursed through him. As everything unfolded, Naruto saw Ares and Hans both barreling toward him. Before either could get close, Naruto lifted his hand, palm out, and unleashed a surge of atomic energy that engulfed them both. Their bodies crumbled, leaving only scattered fragments of bone. Having finished, Naruto redirected his gaze on Greycrow, ceasing the electric shocks. His goal was to use his telepathy to probe the man's thoughts, pulling out every scrap of information connected to Sinister and his activities. Given the fates of their comrades, Arclight and Harpoon were understandably hesitant to confront Naruto. They both spun around, preparing to take off. Naruto just raised his hands, intricate spell circles appearing on them. Then, he summoned eldritch chains that lunged toward Arclight and Harpoon, ensnaring them. That resulted in both of them landing face first on the ground. They hovered for just a moment, then both drifted upwards, eventually settling near Naruto. He'd twisted the eldritch chains, the very ones he'd used to bind Arclight and Harpoon, to bring this about. Naruto's eyes locked onto the duo the moment they were before him. "Did you think you were free to go?" he inquired. "Sorry, but no, you're not going anywhere," he told the pair. Hearing this, Arclight couldn't hold back the tears. Meanwhile, Harpoon was a mess. Naruto, however, didn't seem to care. His primary concentration, however, was on dismantling the myriad mental obstacles and snares Sincipher had embedded into Greycrow's psyche. There were quite a few. Some of those truly intrigued Naruto. He replicated their actions. He did, in the end, get what he wanted. The information, as it happened, was a catalog of Sinister's various hideouts. One of his clones was now there. The very same individual who, it seemed, had issued the Marauders instructions. But the goal wasn't to end Naruto's life, it was to take him prisoner. Also Sinister could make him a pawn. Naruto couldn't contain his laughter when he heard that. "Sinister, make me his puppet." Naruto's thoughts turned inward, a sting of offense settling there. He could overlook a great deal, but the idea of someone trying to pull his strings. That was a different matter entirely. He couldn't let that go. Let's proceed. Having extracted the desired information from Greycrow's mind, Naruto unleashed a devastating surge of atomic energy, obliterating him in an instant. Just as he had with Ares and Hans. Naruto then shifted his focus to Arclight and Harpoon. "Please. I'm sorry. I promise, I won't do anything to you again. Please." Only to discover Arclight pleading for mercy. Naruto snorted at that. "Pathetic," he spat. "You plead for mercy, yet you would have offered me none, had I been just another person. You make me sick." With a swift motion, Naruto flicked his wrist. Telekinesis took hold, and both Harpoon and Arclight's heads spun around, a full 180 degrees. Eliminating them both, with all the Marauders around him gone. Afterward, Naruto gathered the bodies of the surviving Marauders. He rejoined his Doombots, flanked by his 2 Spartan bodyguards. He was biding his time, anticipating the arrival of the troops he'd called for. They did, 5 minutes later. A LDFVTOL, its cloaking field dissipating, touched down just before Naruto and his companions. Naruto, having already mastered cloaking technology and integrated it into his people's arsenal, was well aware of its capabilities. The rear ramp descended, and a squad of heavily armed Spartans poured out. Once they arrived, they started to blanket the area. Zod, clad in his armor, strode directly toward Naruto, the one in charge. "Are you well, my emperor?" Zod inquired. "I am Zod," Naruto said. "The people who came for me weren't anything remarkable. They were just Sinister's puppets. He, apparently, wanted this group I took down, the Marauders, as I figured out from one of their heads, to grab me. Then, Sinister planned to place me under his thumb." Zod's face twisted into a furious mask, his eyes igniting with a fierce blaze as Naruto's words sank in. "Filthy animal," Zod shouted. "To even entertain the notion of controlling our emperor. No, to even lay a hand on him is simply appalling." He bellowed. "Sinister's just sealed his fate," Zod said. He was already familiar with the man, considering the vast amount of knowledge Naruto had absorbed and then passed on. "Zod, of course, but also the other Primarchs. He has," Naruto said, nodding. "Don't let your anger dictate your actions, Zod. There's a task at hand," he said. Naruto, tapping into his telepathic abilities, relayed all he'd gleaned from Greycrow's mind directly to Zod. We need to act fast and take these bases, Naruto said, his voice steady. We can't afford to wait. Sinister could figure out something's amiss with his kidnapping scheme any minute now. Yes, my emperor, Zod said. Time to go, he shouted to the Spartans. Yes, Primarch Zod, they shouted. The Spartans started to board the VTOL again. They took the bodies of the remaining deceased marauders with them. Following Naruto's orders, he intended to examine them later. Before long, the entire group was back on the VTOL. Once the battlefield had been thoroughly cleared, of course. The craft, having completed its maneuver, recloaked. As things unfolded, Naruto started reaching out to his allies. He was already starting to plan a strike against all the sinister bases he'd just discovered. It was time for the man to face Naruto's fury. The Appalachian Mountain Range, New York. Something's off. 6 hours. That was the single, persistent thought occupying the sinister clone's thoughts as he toiled away in one of the original's many hidden facilities. Since he sent the marauders to seize and deliver the monarch of Latveria, Naruto von Regnum, things have been different. He was becoming a real pain. Considering Naruto's probable involvement in relocating mutants and their families to Latveria, the country he observed, the situation was complex. Not that Sinister would ever be able to back it up, of course. Latveria, it seemed, was a fortress. No matter the approach, he couldn't get in. No matter the approach, be it through technology or attempting to plant one of his operatives within the borders, nothing succeeded. The country was effectively sealed off. The same applied to anybody or anything connected to Latveria that was located outside its borders. This ignited Sincipher's rage. That's why he put a reward on Naruto's head. He knew that if the monarch of Latveria met his end, the nation would descend into chaos, and he'd have his chance to enter. Even that scheme was floundering. Every assassin or mercenary who took the task vanished without a trace shortly after agreeing to it. Even with Sinister jacking up the bounty on Naruto, the contract remained untouched. Frustrated by the delays, he took matters into his own hands and assigned his own team to the task. The Marauders, even they seemed to be struggling, though. Damn it, the Sinister clone shouted. He slammed his right hand down on the table. He's just a king of a third-world country. How hard can it be to deal with him? He wondered aloud. Boom. The explosion echoed. The explosion echoed. Asterisk. The Sinister clone's question was immediately followed by a series of explosions. Klaxons blared from every corner of the base. What the hell? Sinister said. I shifted to the console, ready to interface with the base's security protocols. He was shut out, plain and simple. Because an external program was infiltrating the base's systems, it was gaining control. Impossible, the Sinister clone shouted. No, it is possible, a voice spoke unexpectedly. The clone, a twisted reflection, understood its creator. Naruto. Yes, Sinister. It is me, Naruto said. No, hold on, you're not him. You're just that pathetic man's clone. My bad, he remarked. You think just because I'm a clone, I'm somehow less of a threat than the real deal. The Sinister clone demanded. You foolish human. No, it's you and your maker who are the fools, Naruto shot out. Your attack was misguided. Now, you're suffering the consequences, he stated. Big talk from someone who won't even look me in the eye, the Sinister clone shot back. The sound of the lab doors swinging open behind him was the only thing he heard. The clone spun around, and there stood Naruto, clad in his armor. A cluster of Doombots surrounded him. Naruto, shotgun in hand. He aimed it, a weapon now, toward the Sinister clone. Without a moment's pause, the trigger was pulled. The shotgun round slammed into the Sinister clone, the impact sending him sprawling into the wall. Thanks to the ammunition Naruto's weapon was equipped with. It was a new kind of round, the brainchild of his military R&D team. It was called the Tremor Bullet, a bullet that unleashed multiple shockwaves upon impact with its victim. The result was damaging, particularly when it comes to living targets, for a number of reasons. Even when facing someone like Sinister, or a duplicate of him. The Sinister clone, having left a dent in the wall, was abruptly shoved backward as he stood. So, Naruto just shot him again. As he and the Doombots trailed behind, they moved closer to the Sinister clone. So, after that, Naruto summoned these crazy eldritch energy chains to hold the clone in place. As soon as he did that, Naruto shot him right in the face. Making the clone cry out in pain, even though his face came back to life. Since a healing factor was one of his powers, just like the originals. You mentioned that I couldn't face you earlier. So, here I am. Naruto said something. A menacing clone was snarling at him. It's just that feeling of being stuck, right? Since he couldn't get free from his restraints. You cheeky fool. The clone let out a low growl. Do you understand who you're dealing with? Exclamation mark quote. Oh, trust me, I do. Naruto responded. There's this sad guy who gets a kick out of messing with other people's lives. Too afraid to confront the one who's manipulating him directly. Who goes by the name Apocalypse? He said something. When the clone heard this, its angry expression faded away. Instead, it ended up with a blank one. How do you know that name? The sinister clone inquired. Oh, I've got a lot of knowledge. Naruto responded. I get how Apocalypse made your creator his little pawn. I get the feeling he won't handle it himself. I know you both have this psychic connection, and he's picking up on everything we're saying right now. He shared. The real sinister, wherever you are, listen up. I won't stop until everything you've built, everything you've created, and all your plans are completely wiped out. Just when you think things can't get any worse, when you're feeling down, that's when I'll show up right in front of you. Just to let you know, things can actually get worse. Well, it looks like you've got to take responsibility for that one. So, you decided to mess with Naruto, huh? So, after Naruto shared his thoughts, he unleashed a powerful blast of atomic energy and hit the sinister clone with it. Breaking it down completely, leaving no trace at all. He flipped his green cape afterward. Let's go. There's still some work ahead. Naruto chatted with his Doombots. Someone heard what he said and started to follow him. Savage Lands. Mr. Sinister's base. In his brand new base located in the Savage Lands, Sinister found himself alone in a room packed with screens. All of them were showing a bunch of his bases around the world getting raided. He recognized the forces that belonged to Naruto von Regnum. Interestingly, Sinister wasn't able to get any of the raided bases' self-destruct protocols to activate. Because there was something getting in the way of him doing that. As he kept watching the attack coming his way, Sinister felt a surge of anger like he hadn't experienced in ages. And let's not forget another feeling that the centuries-old scientist hardly ever experienced. That's one he'd never own up to. Feeling scared. Doomstat, Latveria, July 5, 2008. As I stepped off the plane, I took a deep breath, savoring the scent of Latverian air that I hadn't inhaled in quite some time. I'm happy to be back home. I've got a ton of data from the raids my team and I did on those sinister bases we hit, but honestly, I haven't had the time to go through it all yet. Now that I'm back, things are going to be different. Once I wrap up a few other things, of course. So, it's all about getting the guest I brought back with me all settled in. Naruto, that's beautiful. Wow, this place is awesome. Susan and Johnny both chimed in as they got off the plane right behind me. Next up were Ben and Alicia. So, they all decided to come and visit Latveria. I wanted the others to come, not just Susan for the obvious reason. So, I just declared war on Sinister, and honestly, who knows what that guy might do to the people I care about. So, I took the rest of the F4 to Latveria and set up a ton of surveillance on the X-Men and anyone connected to the Future Foundation. Until Zod has wrapped up taking apart Sinister's organization until there's barely anything left of it. That's his main job for the time being. That's what he needed. I assigned the other Primarchs to handle similar things, and I didn't want him to feel left out. So, let's talk about what those tasks are. Kadma Shore, I was appointed as the liaison for Latveria to Atuma and the Atlanteans overall. They're not just aiming to take over Atlantis and deal with Namor, but also looking to dominate all the oceans out there in the name of Doom. Ivy is diving into her magical studies right now, and once she wraps those up, I've got her lined up to start working on a magic core. Frag, I've set my sights on creating a fully functioning space force. Before I even think about exploring the wider galaxy, I'll make sure I have Earth and the whole Sol system secured and ready to go. So, about Thaddeus, I've assigned him to lead a brand new department that's all about handling the superhuman population in Latveria. It doesn't include Spartans and Primarchs. So, I've basically come up with my own take on Canada's Department H, the one that oversees their superhuman team, Alpha Flight. They both exist here. I started this department because the superhuman population is diverse. I've heard that some folks who've come from Latveria are actually interested in helping out to make the world a better place for their fellow Evos. Just like Marco Diaz and Darwin too. I'm on board with that. I'm not about to just toss them in the water and expect them to figure out how to swim on their own. Oh no, I'm going to ensure that they, along with others who share similar interests, have all the tools and resources they need to achieve their goals in the future. So, that's how Providence came to be. Let's keep going. Once the rest of the F4 and Alicia got off the plane, everyone else I had brought to the USA followed right behind them. Just then, a few hovercars showed up at our spot. Wow, Johnny said. Vehicles that defy gravity, Susan thought to herself. Just like the Fantastic car, Ben said. Sure, but also not. I got back to them. I mentioned that, even though it's similar, my design is different from the one Reed used. Alright, let's wrap up our chat for now. How about we keep the conversation going at my place? I mentioned. The F4 agreed after hearing me out. So, after everyone was done, we all hopped into hovercars. I ended up in the one with Susan, of course, and then we took off. As we zipped through the city, Susan couldn't help but marvel at the sights, and before we knew it, we had arrived at Castle Doom. So, we all got out of the hovercars then. Wow, you live in a castle like your royalty. Johnny said with excitement, when he first saw Castle Doom. When he did, I couldn't help but put a wry smile on my face. So, I'm the one in charge of this nation, Johnny. Well, you know, I live in a castle. So, where did you think I lived? In a tiny, cozy one-bedroom apartment. No, but you know what I mean. You live in a castle, huh? Johnny mentioned it once more. I can't believe it, it's just a bit hard to wrap my head around. He came clean. I'm not sure I understand that. There are quite a few monarchies around today that reside in castles and palaces, just like I do. Just like the British royal family and the various royals from the Middle East. I had a chat. Haha. Doom's got you on that one, matchstick. Ben started talking. He got a dirty glare from Johnny, but he just brushed it off. We all just tuned out those two as they kicked off another one of their typical banter sessions. So, we all started to go off and do our own thing. I managed to easily convince Susan to let me show her the throne room. Just a heads up, Jessica is joining us. Before we knew it, the three of us were standing at the entrance to the throne room. So, once the Doombots, which were always standing guard outside, opened the doors to let us into the room. When they did, our trio walked into the throne room. The Doombots shut the doors right after we walked in. Just the five of us hanging out together. Lucia and Zora were hanging out in the throne room, just waiting for us. I had sent them messages, asking them to be there. Have you seen Lucia and Zora around? Susan glanced over at them. Lucia, it's great to see you again after so long. Susan had a chat with her. Then she turned to Zora. And who are you? She asked. Zora Vukovic is her name. Minister of Defense from Latveria. I had a chat. As I walked up to Zora, I leaned in and gave her a quick kiss on the lips. Naruto, Susan said with excitement. I just brushed her off and focused on Lucia instead. He leaned in and planted a kiss on her lips, then turned to face Susan. She had this expression that was a mix of shock, pain, and a hint of anger all rolled into one. Susan, let me break this down for you. I mentioned. What do you mean by that? You're just some playboy who thinks it's cool to kiss two women right in front of the one you've gotten PRM. Before Susan could say anything else, I closed the gap between us and kissed her to quiet her down. There was definitely one she could have stopped if she wanted to, but she decided against it. You're sharing a lot with me. As I broke our kiss, I noticed Susan's surprised look, but I chose to focus on her instead, wrapping her in a soft embrace. Susan, it's not what you think. I gently said to her. I'm not the type of guy who just shows affection to any woman who happens to catch my eye. I have to say, I care for Lucia and Zora, and maybe a few other women, just like I care for you. Love, I went ahead and explained. That's not a lie. I love Susan, Lucia, and Zora. I've begun that journey with Jessica. Well, with Deathbird, it's just not going to happen until she decides to play nice. Oh, and you know what? I should go check out that feathered alien warlike princess. I haven't reached out in a few months, and I don't want her to feel like I'm neglecting her or anything like that. Unless she's into that kind of neglect play. Given how eager she was when she welcomed me, it's hard to say what she's into. But, I'm going to see her. I'm hoping she'll be one of my future queens. Just like all the ladies who are here in my throne room right now. Wait, you love me? Susan wanted to know. I do, I said to her. But it's not just you. You see, I'm just a greedy guy. Oh, I get that. Susan shot back a reply right away. Oh, you have a harem. Yeah, I said, I've got nothing to be ashamed of. But you know what? I've got queens. I'm hoping you'll be one of them. I told her, this is, you. Susan started to stutter. It's a good sign that she's not lashing out at me or trying to mess with me from the inside by expanding one of her force fields inside of me. As she kept stuttering, I softly put a finger on her lips, which made her stop talking. I get that this might feel a little overwhelming. I sure do. So, take your time to think it over. Chat about stuff with the other ladies. I mentioned. Just give me a shout when you've made a decision, okay? I had a chat. I stepped away from Susan and started to get ready to head out. But first, I went over to Jessica and gave her a kiss too. And a little playful pinch on the backside. Once I did, I left the throne room feeling excited. So, I quickly opened a portal and just stepped right through it. So, I just got to one of the detention facilities I set up to hold some specific individuals. When I shut the portal behind me, the guards and Doombots on duty immediately snapped to attention as soon as they spotted me. Emperor, a human guard chimed in. I said, I'm here to see Eric Stevens. I mentioned, Zemo had managed to get both him and Clow and brought them to Latveria more than a week ago. Now that they've had a bit of time to get comfortable, I think it's time to get them started on serving the will of Doom. Stay tuned for more. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this video. I'm thrilled you watched the video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe for even more exciting content coming your way soon.